What is going on, Pretender here, back with another Honkai style guide, and today I'm here with the full build guide for the second half character of 3.3, being Cipher. So in this video, I'm going to be taking you over what you do need to know in order to properly build her, including her kit and eidolons. Followed by that will be Lightcone recommendations, and then Relic sets and Planar ornaments recommended to run on her. And then finally, what I do recommend for the main stats and substats for the actual relics and what they want. I plan on having a full build guide for every single new and returning character in 3.3. You can already check out the ones for Hyacinth and the Herda, and you are now watching the one for Cipher. Very soon there will be one for Aglia as well. That's all I wanted to say before I get into the video. If you guys found this video helpful in any way, shape, or form, dropping a like would be greatly appreciated. If you're new or haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and turn the bell icon for future videos like this, along with all the types of style content and guides, and let's get straight into the video. So Cipher is a quantum character following the path of nihility. Her basic attack is the generic, dealing 100% of Cipher's attack to the designated enemy you do select. Her skill is going to be able to weaken the primary enemy you do choose to hit, and also the adjacent targets. Weaken will lower the damage dealt by those enemies you do hit by 10%, and will also at the same time increase Cipher's attack by 30% for 2 turns when you do use the skill. It deals quantum damage equal to 200% of Cipher's attack to that main primary target, and to the adjacent targets it will deal 100% instead. When it comes to Cipher's ultimate, first it will deal quantum damage equal to 120% of Cipher's attack to the designated enemy you do select. After that, it will proc a true damage effect of the recorded talent value effect to that one designated enemy, equal to 25% of that recorded value. Also, it will deal quantum damage equal to 40% of Cipher's attack to that designated enemy and also the adjacent targets, and then will deal true damage equal to 75% of the talent's current recorded value, and will be distributed to all skill targets. When it comes to her talent, if no one on the field is inflicted by Cipher's patron state, she will make the enemy that does have the highest max HP currently on the battlefield become that patron state. And if you do use her skill or ultimate on a primary target, that primary target you do select becomes patron, and can only be afflicted on the latest person. If you have other teammates attack that enemy that does have the patron state, Cipher is able to deal a follow-up attack against that enemy that does have that patron state, doing quantum damage equal to 150% of her attack, and can only be triggered every turn that Cipher does have. Cipher can also record up to 12% of the non-true damage allies will deal to that patron state when you are attacking them, and if you do use the ultimate to proc that effect that the ultimate does have, it will clear the recorded value. And also do note, overflow damage is not recorded. For a technique, she will obtain a blessing for 15 seconds. During that time, she has increased movement speed and also will be undetectable. And if you are in simulated or divergent universe, you have a chance of immediately obtaining a consumable item, and you can obtain up to 50 times each Earth day. If you do enter battle while Cipher does have that blessing, she does quantum damage equal to 100% of her attack to all enemies, and will increase the recorded damage Cipher does obtain from that damage instance by 200%. For her bonus traces, her A2 will allow her to gain crit rate based off her current speed. On top of that, her speed will also let her increase the recorded value she does have in her talent. If you have 140 speed, you get 25% crit rate and increase the recorded value by 50%. And if you have 170 speed or higher, that crit rate instead becomes 50% and the recorded value goes up to 100%. Her A4 will allow her to record 8% of the non-true damage allies will deal to the enemies aside from patron, and overflow damage is still not recorded. And her A6 will allow her follow-up attack to deal 100% more crit damage than it normally would, and anytime Cipher is active on the battlefield, she is able to make every enemy take 40% more damage. When we do take a look at her eidolons, her E1 will increase the recorded damage value up to 150% of the original, and on top of that, anytime she does use a follow-up attack, she now will increase her own attack by 80% for 2 turns. Her E2 will make enemies take 30% more damage for 2 turns if Cipher does actually hit them. Her E4 allows quantum additional damage to be dealt to the enemies that your allies attack that do have that patron state. And her E6 massively increases the damage that her follow-up attack does by a whole 350% at that, and now also records an additional 16% of non-overflow damage by that attack. And when you do actually reset the record by using her ultimate, now instead of clearing all of it, you do get a 20% return of that record. When we do take a look at Cipher's Lightcone options, her far and none best one is obviously going to be her own signature Lightcone, as it does provide the wearer a 18% increase to speed, and after the wearer uses attack, there is a 120% base chance to inflict the bamboozle state on every enemy target, and while they are under that effect, the enemy target's defense decreases by 16% for 2 turns, and if the wear speed is equal to or higher than 170, you have a 120% base chance to inflict theft state on every enemy target, and while under the theft state, enemy target's defense decreases by 8% for 2 turns. and when either of those debuffs are inflicted repeatedly, only the latest effect inflicted can be active. So to start it off, you do gain an 18% increase to your actual speed, which is great because Cipher does want to have 170 or higher speed in battle. She does have a very high base speed that is also paired with speed traces, and this Lightcone actually helping you with that makes the 170 requirement significantly easier. Cipher is also a debuff slash sub DPS, and this further increases that capability because now you also get a defense shred in 2 different forms of the bamboozled and theft state. Both of them helping you actually provide defense shred, which is going to not only make Cipher do more damage, but your team do more damage as well. So for your main DPS, let's say Acheron or Feixiao, they will do more damage to those enemies that do have that defense shred as well. If you also have someone like Tribby on the team, when she launches her follow-up attack, it's going to do more damage there as well. So not only is it making it easier for her to build, it will now also make it to where you now have access to defense shred, which is going to be great because now your team can do more damage, and if you have other sources of defense ignore or defense shred, it will become that much more valuable. So that is why her signature Lightcone is the best option. Another really good option to use on her is going to be the Pearls Lightcone, which will give you the ability to ensnare a hit enemy that is not already ensnared. You'll have a 60% base chance to ensnare that hit enemy, and ensnared enemies will have a defense decrease by 12% for 1 turn, and at S5 it is a 100% base chance with a 16% defense shred for those who actually do have the ensnared state. So this also further amplifies to her debuffer role by giving her access to defense shred, so you pair it with everything she does have, and now she gains access to another debuff in the form of another defense shred. And just as I mentioned with the signature Lightcone, if you do pair this with other sources of defense ignore, other sources of defense shred, it becomes a lot more valuable. Even at base, if you don't have any other sources, it still is going to be nice because you still will be dealing increased damage to those that do have the ensnare state. And as she is able to hit multiple enemies, you are able to ensnare quite a few enemies in the battle, which is going to be great for any sort of DPS you are using, so that is why Pearls is another great option. Those are going to be your primarily go-tos when you are getting Lightcones for Cipher. These next ones mainly focus on our damage and slightly less on the debuffer role, but still can help on the debuffer role. Except this next one I'm going to talk about, the one that's only going to be benefiting her personal damage is Acheron's signature Lightcone, as it provides a 36% increase to crit damage, and when the wearer hits an enemy, inflicts Mirage Fizzle on the enemy for 1 turn. Each time the wearer does attack, the effect can only trigger 1 time on each target, and the wearer will deal 24% increased damage to enemies afflicted with Mirage Fizzle, and will also increase the damage dealt by the ultimate, additionally by 24%. So this is not going to help her on her debuffer role, it's only going to amplify her sub DPS potential as it's only focusing on her damage. Crit damage is going to increase her overall damage anytime you do crit. Now she gains access to a debuff that is only going to benefit her when you do hit enemies with that Mirage Fizzle state, just doing 24% overall more damage to those enemies, and then anytime you do use your ultimate, now that actual hits are going to do even more damage than it normally would. So if you want the most damage out of your Cipher, this actually becomes a really good option at the cost of sacrificing her debuffer role. Another one you can use is Silverwolf's Lightcone. This one is more balanced between her and also your team. Provides the wearer a 24% increase to effect hit rate, which isn't useless on Cipher. You do want to get some effect hit rate, and this makes it easier to get. When the wearer deals damage to an enemy that currently has 3 or more debuffs, increases the wearer's crit rate by 12%. After the wearer uses their basic attack, skill, or ultimate, there's a 100% base chance to implant Aether Code on a random hit enemy that does not yet have it. Targets with Aether Code will receive 12% more damage for 1 turn. This is actually pretty good because I did mention effect hit rate is going to be good because you don't have a guaranteed chance if you don't have any effect hit rate. To guarantee a debuff with her base chances against any enemy in the game currently, you will want around 46 effect hit rate. But ideally, you still want to get mainly around 35% as it gives you the best chance. You just want to focus on it, but you don't want to actually have it take away from your crit or speed substats. Just getting some rolls will help, and this Lightcone's main effect does provide that, which makes it easier. On top of that, it does also give you crit rate. Cipher doesn't have to focus as much on crit rate because she gives herself so much in her base kit, but still getting some extra will subtract even more rolls you would want on crit rate to get closer to 100%, so that's why it is still welcomed. And to top it all off, you do still have access to a debuff that's going to not only increase Cipher's damage dealt to those enemies, but also your team's damage. So it's not a Lightcone that's only benefiting her, it also will benefit your team. Not by much, but it is still an extra something, which is why it's another option you can use. And then the last option I'm going to mention is also only one for her damage, and that is Good Night and Sleep Well, which for every debuff the enemy target has, the damage dealt by the wearer will increase by 12% for 3 stacks, and also applies the dot. And at S5, it is a 24% increase to the damage dealt to those enemies with debuffs. So again, she's able to apply debuffs. If you have anyone else, it makes it that much easier. This is not going to allow her to gain access to any defense shred or any other debuffs, unfortunately, but it will further amplify her own damage, so it mainly focuses purely on her sub-DPS capability, giving you up to a 72% increase to damage dealt to those enemies that would have 3 debuffs, so it actually becomes a pretty big increase to her sub-DPS capability, making it another good option if you are willing to sacrifice debuff for applications that other Lightcones may provide. When it comes to relic options for Cipher, her best in slot is actually going to be 4-piece Pioneer, which 2-piece increases damage dealt to enemies with debuffs by 12%, 4-piece will provide 4% crit rate, and the wearer will deal 8%/12% increased crit damage to enemies that have 2/3 debuffs, and after the wearer inflicts a debuff on enemy targets, aforementioned effects will increase by 100% for 1 turn. So the 2-piece will be always active for Cipher, as she is going to make enemies have a debuff where they take increased damage anyways. She's able to apply debuffs and even more with certain Lightcones. This also gives you an extra 4% crit rate, and now you're able to deal 12% increased crit damage to enemies with those 3 debuffs, which she's able to apply most of those, and then if you have anyone else, it makes it that much easier. Her also being able to apply a debuff is going to help her hit the aforementioned effects increase by 100%, making you deal a lot more crit damage than you normally would. So it's a big jump by giving her more crit damage dealt to those enemies. It gives her some crit rate, so less rolls you will need once again, and a free 12% damage dealt to enemies practically permanently, which is why overall it is her best in slot to use. Another good set for her damage is going to be the 4-piece of the Genius set. 2-piece increases quantum damage by 10%, and the 4-piece will allow 10% defense ignore when dealing damage to an enemy target, and if they have quantum weakness, it's an additional 10%, giving you up to a 20% defense ignore. Pairing this 20% defense ignore with other forms of defense ignore she may be able to gain, and then other sources of defense shred, be it through her Lightcone or other debuffers, will make it more stronger than it already is. But the extra defense ignore you are getting from the 4-piece is nice, and the 2-piece is also increasing her overall damage as she does do quantum damage, is why it is actually another option you can use. Another thing you can actually use is 4-piece Eagle set. 2-piece is useless as she doesn't do wind damage. 4-piece, after the wearer uses their ultimate, they get an action advance by 25%. So this is primarily when you are focusing on her debuff roll, getting her to get as much turns as possible, get a bunch of refreshes on her follow-up attack, and apply as many debuffs as you want to possibly can. This is going to accelerate her rotations even more, giving her access to that 25% action forward when you do use her ultimate. So if you want to go the route where you want to primarily have her as a debuff application bot, that can also deal, pretty decent damage, but this will sacrifice some damage to mainly access more debuffs, then it's actually a strong option you can use, especially since you already build her at a high 170 or higher speed. With this, it can help you actually push the point where you can get up to 3 turns in 1 cycle, which is why it's another strong set you can use. Past that, it is going to be combining 2-pieces, so you can do 2-piece debuff with 2-piece of either the speed sets, so Hacker Space or Relieve the Ordeal, or 2-piece of one of those with 2-piece of one of the quantum increase sets, so Poet and the quantum set, the Genius set and those would be your options. So primarily, overall, you want to just farm Pioneer. If not that, you are farming for it, or you just want to use 4-piece Genius, that works as well. If you want her as a really fast debuff applicator, you can actually just use Eagle. And for 2-pieces, if you don't have any of those 4-pieces available, it's 2-piece of the Pioneer set with 2-piece of one of the speed sets, or 2-piece of either of those with 2-piece of one of the 2 quantum sets. And when it does come to Planar Ornaments, one of her best, if not her best in slot, is going to be Glamoth, which provides a 12% increase to attack, and when the wearer's speed is equal to or higher than 135/160, the wearer deals 12%/18% more damage. So a free 12% attack is going to increase her overall damage, and a proper build Cipher will practically be getting the full effect of this actual ornament, as you do want over 170 minimum. So if you have over 170 for her trace, by proxy you're going to be maxing out the Planar Ornament, so giving you 18% more damage. So it is a free attack increase and free damage overall. Very easy to access too, which is why it is her best. Another good one you primarily would be using if you are running her on the follow-up team is going to be Duran, which when an ally, this does also include the wearer, it just doesn't mention it, uses a follow-up attack, the wearer gains a stack on merit, stacking up to 5 times, and each merit stack will increase follow-up attack damage by 5%, and once you do have 5 stacks, additionally will increase the wearer's crit damage by 25%. The reason I do say with other follow-up units is just because it will be a bit slow, as she does have some decent follow-up attack output, but it's not as fast as a fully fledged follow-up attack based character such as Feixiao, Topaz, and so on. So on a non-follow-up attack team, it's a bit slow to stack this up, but if you're okay with that, you still can use it on other teams if you just happen to have really good pieces, as it will increase her follow-up attack, which is going to be a big source of her damage. It's not her primary source, but it's still good, giving you up to a 25% increased damage dealt for that. And once you do have 5 stacks, give you 25% crit damage, which is going to increase any crit source you do. So that will increase her main source of damage with the ultimate and the proc, her skill, her follow-up attack, and so on. So it is another option you can use. You can also use Inertial Sato, as it does provide 8% crit rate, and when the wearer's current crit rate reaches 50% or higher, which with the trace alone is going to be enough, damage dealt by the wearer's ultimate and follow-up attack increases by 15%. It's not as good as the other ones, but it is increasing ultimate and follow-up at the same time, with your follow-up attacks will now do 15% more damage, and once you do use the ultimate, the actual hit alongside the proc is going to do more damage as well. The actual hit is going to do more damage, so you have the actual hit doing more damage than it normally would, and also the proc for the main source of damage you would do overall. Getting increases to that is going to be nice, and the extra 8% it does provide for crit rate is once again going to help you require less rolls in your substats, which is why Sato is another option you can use. For the main stats on the relics, for the body, you always will be doing crit damage. For the feet, you want to run speed. For the orb, you want to run quantum damage. And for the link rope, you primarily want to do attack percent. But if you are doing a really fast debuff applicator, so with like Eagle Set and so on, you can actually use energy regenerate. It's going to lower her damage even more, but it's going to allow her to get frequent ultimates, which is going to refresh the Eagle Set proc a lot more, allow you to get more ultimates at the same time, which is why that setup is actually an option you can use if you want to sacrifice her damage to make her more of a debuff generator. For the substats, first, you want to prioritize speed to get it to 170 minimum. After that, you want to focus on generic crit damage primarily and crit rate, and also focus on some effect hit rate rolls. If you can get effect hit rate around 35%, that's going to be great. If you can somehow push it to 46%, that is going to be insanely good, but you don't have to focus on getting it that high. Just getting it around 30 to 35 will be great. Just be sure you don't sacrifice, crit damage rolls, some crit rate, and especially something like speed for those effect hit rate rolls. You don't really need to have effect hit rate or too much of it at all, as she does attack a lot, but it is still to have just so you can get it easier and just have a more easier time applying debuffs. So if you can happen to have this effect hit rate rolls on your substats, that will be good. So once again, first focus on speed, get it to 170 or higher, then focus on more crit damage and also throw in some crit rate rolls to get as close as 100% as possible, and then if you can, effect hit rate rolls as well. And then obviously some attack percent rolls will be beneficial. And yep, that is the full build guide for Cipher. Once again, if you guys found the video helpful, dropping a like would be greatly appreciated. If you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and turn the bell for future videos like this, along with all the types of Star content and guides. And I'll see you later. Peace out.